Hi everyone, my name's Bethan and I'm the host of the Guardians of the Apprentice Podcast. In this podcast we'll be speaking to different guardians each episode and learning about their experience of their child doing an apprenticeship. And they'll also be sharing their advice to other guardians whose children are thinking about starting their apprenticeship journey. This episode we'll be speaking to Gary Woodman, who's the Chief Executive of the Worcestershire LEP, and we'll be hearing about his daughter Daisy and her apprenticeship experience. Hi Gary, thanks so much for joining us today on the podcast. So first of all, can you tell us a bit about your daughter? What did she do for her apprenticeship?
Yeah, so Daisy did a business admin apprenticeship level 3. It lasted about 18 months in a company not in Worcestershire, but slightly outside. And so she really enjoyed the apprenticeship and got herself through it. And so now she's finished and she's gone into a full-time role.
So before your daughter started her apprenticeship, how much did you kind of know about them?
Not a massive amount. Obviously that sounds a bit odd being the Chief Executive of Worcestershire LEP, and obviously one of our key programmes is the apprenticeship programme. But I suppose it's not until you get into the nuts and bolts of applying, understanding that process and kind of, I suppose, supporting your daughter or kind of whoever through that you start to realise there is that kind of formal job application process, and that can be a little bit different or daunting than perhaps you expect it to be.
Yeah, definitely. And how did you feel then at first when your daughter told you that she was kind of interested in going down that apprenticeship route? How did you feel?
In one sense, quite proud, because I think it's very easy as a parent to kind of look at kind of GCSEs, basically A-levels as well, and then when actually uni's probably not where I want to go. There was a bit of kind of family discussion around that in terms of which subjects. So she did apply through the UCAT process, but decided in the end, no, that wasn't where she wanted to go. Kind of applying to a roofing company was quite interesting in the sense of, well, what do you know about roofing? And of course the answer is nothing really, like probably most of us. But kind of researching the company, understanding a bit about what they do was enough in one sense, probably to get her the role in the first place.
Yeah, that's really interesting that she kind of applied to both routes and then made that decision for the apprenticeship in the end when comparing them, weighing them up. Yes, that's good. And how did your daughter find her apprenticeship? How did she find the whole experience?
I think kind of probably getting out of that kind of school, she did A-levels at the same school, so in one sense she was in kind of quite a protected environment, an environment that was familiar. Suddenly you were going into a kind of the workplace, but I have to say the company was fantastic. It wasn't long after, so she had a gap of finishing her A-levels, and then she literally started about 4 weeks later.
Wow.
And then it was her 18th birthday, sort of 4 weeks after that. Uh-huh. But they threw a whole kind of company kind of surprise, got her presents, cake, all sorts of stuff. So I think that kind of eased that tension and made her feel really welcome. And then like any kind of workplace, you've got different people with different backgrounds, different ages. So I think she got mothered a little bit, but that's all part of it. People are just looking after her and making sure that she kind of came into and was part of the team. Yeah,
that must have been quite a big change then, going from like A-levels and school to into like a job so soon after. So that's really good to hear that the company supported her in that so much and was so welcoming and encouraging.
Yeah, interesting. She had to get up a bit earlier than she wanted into school, but that kind of travel to work and those kind of things just meant that they're very quickly into kind of they wear a uniform. Yeah. So there was some familiarity there, which I think kind of helped. So I think the employers want people who can turn up on time, look presentable, kind of have the confidence to kind of speak up. Daisy's got plenty of the ability to speak up. So I think that kind of transition kind of wasn't too difficult, but when her sister followed the university route, her older sister, there's that bit of, well, you can still be in bed and work, so more sibling rivalry than kind of probably the problems around transitioning into the workplace.
Yeah. So what would you say to other guardians that might have concerns around their child starting an apprenticeship? What advice would you give to them?
I think there's that thing of, I think everyone's probably going through the university route's great, but I think you can kind of do that at any point.
Yeah.
And certainly letting Days kind of choose their own route to some extent, find that employer, the money soon starts to flow and come in, and therefore that kind of helps in terms of giving Daisy that independence, but also the bank of mum and dad still in use. I think in terms of kind of my advice probably to other guardians is, kind of support them through that route. Actually, the world of work is something that you kind of is really good. And actually, in my kind of full-time job, lots of people who I meet who are kind of managing directors, when you talk to them about their job role, where they started, often it's the apprenticeship route.
Yeah.
I think that's particularly the case in Worcestershire, Herefordshire, and the surrounding counties. Actually, a lot of the businesses do have a kind of training policy about growing their own. And I think that means that kind of expectation of somebody coming out of university, actually, as an apprentice, they're kind of years in front. So Daisy now is into sort of 2.5 years of work experience, and yet her older sibling who's got friends are still struggling, having done 3 years at uni and then working in part-time, 0 hours, coffee shops and all sorts of things, not really doing the career they've had. So whereas Daisy's now in a position where each department within the company is starting to have a conversation with her about, well, do you want to be into IT or HR or health and safety, or so you can really see those opportunities kind of in front of her, and then perhaps the company's going to support her to kind of go further in terms of qualifications. So it certainly opened my eyes to how quickly somebody can progress.
Yeah.
Certainly making me think about my own career and going, why did I go? And actually, could have gone the apprenticeship route, and in hindsight, probably should have. So
yeah.
I think somebody who's perhaps gone as a parent, gone through that kind of university route, you kind of need to kind of support your young person as much as you can.
Yeah, yeah. And it definitely shows how having that practical job experience from early on serves as such a benefit as someone goes forward in their career and moves forward as well.
Yeah, and as a person, she's grown in terms of confidence, very business-like sometimes when she talks to both her mum and me. You can kind of see that kind of efficiency and just the confidence in an all-round person of willing to speak to, in their case, operatives and people who work out on the sites, willing to speak to senior managers. Just kind of, as a person, they kind of come on and grow so much as well. Yeah.
So what would you say your proudest moment has been since Daisy started and completed her apprenticeship?
I think on completion, her training provider did like an awards session where she won the Endeavour Award in terms of her apprenticeship. So kind of seeing her kind of on stage and winning that was obviously a proud moment where you got a bit of dust in the eye as she kind of accepted that award. But I think just seeing her kind of grow as a person and being part of a work team which is varying ages, varying skills, and her ability to talk to people who are operative working on site, but also managing directors, means that you can see that she's changed as a person. And obviously maybe 3 or 4 pay rises can be quite envious actually of that approach that she's already having. So that apprenticeship wage didn't last too long.
What would you say your top tips for other guardians supporting their child would be?
I think it's kind of recognising that application process can feel a bit daunting. The application was wide and not necessarily for a specific position, but actually then employers then picked up that sort of CV piece. So I think writing that can be quite difficult. Often people don't like writing things about themselves in terms of you're having to present that in the best light, and therefore kind of just, again, there's loads of resources out there on the web. Skills for Worcestershire you can have a look at in terms of their sort of CV writing. I think those are the bits that in the early days we kind of helped her through. Apart from that, it's been a fairly easy process. There is that kind of earn and learn bit, so there is some learning behind this, and there's some times where you go, this could be a bit interesting. But the project was very based around the employer, so you sort of can help, but you can't. I think it's a kind of that kind of hands-off, have you done your homework piece.
Yeah.
But Daisy certainly did hers while she was in that 37 hours, and I think how each employer takes that. But I think any concerns, you can still go to the HR department at the company and have those conversations.
Yeah.
I think that's probably really important. And obviously the training provider does keep in touch with them as an individual, but they're an adult there. It's not a school environment. There's no parents' evenings. So it is sort of sitting down and talking to that. And then I think you've got the kind of, which you have everywhere, even here at the local enterprise partnership, there's some office quirks. There's some people who are passionate about delivering their job, but they do it in a certain way, and they've done it for years. So I think that kind of age difference. But I think recognising that the world of work has all different characters in it, and therefore developing a bit of a tougher skin is something that sometimes the person who may be a bit tough love towards them, actually it's not school now.
Yeah.
And actually they just want them to do the best and to make sure that the job's done to its best ability.
Yeah.
And I think how you help people, whether it's your child or a young person, or even just another person in the team when you're at work, if they're coming in as an apprentice, just having those kind of conversations to help them through that period of recognising that person's approach can be a bit direct, but you can help them out.
Yeah, no, that sounds really good. Thank you. Thanks so much for speaking with us today. It's been really great to hear your experience of being a parent of someone who's done an apprenticeship, so thank you.
Thanks. I certainly advocate anybody encouraging their sort of young person through that exercise, because it certainly moves you from school into the world of work with a little bit of a softer landing than perhaps 3 years at university.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Hopefully that gave you a bit of an insight into Daisy's apprenticeship experience. Keep an eye out for future episodes coming soon.